Democracy thrives on transparency. That's why we document Irish political voices as they are, complete, unedited, and accessible to all. Subscribe to join us in strengthening public discourse.
Deputy Ivana Bacik.
Minister, it seems this week we see yet another screeching U-turn from your government. After your recent U-turns on rent pressure zones and on tax and spending priorities for this budget, this time the change of tack relates to Minister James Lawless's announcement on college fees. On Sunday, Minister Lawless took to the national airwaves to say that there would be what amounts to a massive hike in fees this year, apparently from the €2,000 students paid last year to €3,000 this year. Now this, as you'll know, Minister, has caused widespread consternation among students, parents and families, because across the country, the budgeting plans for households, particularly with multiple children in third level, these plans have been thrown into doubt. And this during a cost of living crisis. Minister, you know the pressure households are under. Grocery prices have risen by more than 5% since this time last year. Average monthly rents are now at €2,000. And it's not just families and students who are concerned about the impact of this U-turn, because it appears that your junior partner in the coalition of chaos, Fine Gael, are also in consternation about this announcement. The Taoiseach even suggested this morning, in what sounded like a desperate scramble to row back on Minister Lawless's plans, he announced that third-level fees would go up and then might come down again, all within one college year. No certainty about this. So it seems Fine Gael backbenchers have gone even further to distance themselves from Minister Lawless. We heard it on yesterday's Live Line. A Fine Gael TD trying to do the impossible, simultaneously appearing to both defend and criticise Minister Lawless and sounding shocked about the announcement, which is ridiculous, because Fine Gael are in government and they've no right to be shocked. Minister Lawless mooted this in the spring. Minister, you might remember that on 1st of April, an article by Pat Leahy appeared in the Irish Times saying that Minister Lawless had signalled that the €1,000 could be cut this year, meaning an effective increase in fees for many students. Now, perhaps Fine Gael believed this was an April Fool's joke, given the date, but this is no laughing matter. And Minister, again on Live Line yesterday, we heard the genuine distress and concern among so many families. Mere weeks before the autumn term begins, students now wondering will they be able to afford to progress to third-level education at all, and this is appalling for people. At 6 o'clock next Tuesday, Labour have called a protest outside the gates of Leinster House, led by our higher education spokesperson, Senator Laura Harman. And alongside students, unions and other political parties, we'll be calling on you to halt this sharp hike in student fees. Now, you may have U-turned again by then, and I genuinely hope you will have, but I take the opportunity to invite your colleagues in Fine Gael to come to the protest. And indeed, you're welcome too, Minister, but your time might be better spent with Minister Lawless trying to figure out a way to get out of this latest mess that Fianna Fáil is making. You have a surplus of almost €1.8 billion in the National Training Fund. That can only be spent for education purposes. So would you consider using that money to keep fees low, and will you commit that students will not have to pay this extortionately high increase this year?
So, as you know, Deputy, in last year's budget we set out a number of measures which were taken on a one-off and temporary nature, and the reduction that was made on a one-year basis was reflected in that cost of living package. The second area is that we said, as an incoming government, and that the decisions we would make in the context of Budget 2026 would be decisions that we would make on a permanent and sustained basis. And it's on that basis that every government minister will be engaging with both myself and Minister Donoghue around the envelope that's agreed by government in July, and what their priorities are in the context of each government department. And Minister Lawless has also said that in the context of the work he's already undertaking around a pathway on the cost of education, that publication will be made available prior to the budget, and he's engaged with many student representatives, recognising the costs that many students face across our economy. And that's why the backdrop is important. The sustained reductions that have been made in recent years. If you take the reckonable income, for example, of €64,000, the standard rate income thresholds, which increased and are increasing by 15% from September, one of the largest increases to maintenance thresholds, and 1 in 3 students paid no contribution at all. So the government in previous years took sustained, permanent action to reduce the cost of higher education. And what we're saying in the context of Budget 2026 is that we want to go and make further changes again. But it will be what we can do on a sustained and permanent basis. And we have to be cognizant of the economic backdrop, something that you've just dismissed in your contribution. We face significant economic uncertainty. And everyone across this House needs to realise the level and the degree of the concentration risk for corporate tax receipts which exist right now. The changes which are being undertaken by the OECD in the context of corporation tax brings uncertainty. The underlying trade environment and the nature of the open trading economy that Ireland sits within presents significant uncertainty. And that's why we need to approach Budget 2026 with caution, and the decisions we make we must be assured that they can be sustained over the medium to long term. And it's on that basis that we're trying to calibrate a tax and expenditure package which is appropriate and responsible, and that will involve ministers making choices and setting out clear priorities around their expenditure demands, or indeed changes they want to make to taxation. But I believe protecting the and ensuring that we protect the resilience of the Irish economy is really central. If you looked at the last number of years, we've had significant growth in public expenditure in responding to the series of crises that the Irish economy faced. But we now know many of the downside risks that exist could well crystallise in the short term, and that's why we need to be careful around overall expenditure management.
Well, Minister, I've listened carefully to what you said, but with respect, it's a somewhat Alice in Wonderland approach for parents and students listening in, because what I think you said is that people may think this is an increase, but really it's a reduction. And that's not the reality. What people are going to feel in their pockets this year is that they'll be paying an extra €1,000. That's the reality for people, no matter how it's sugar-coated or no matter how it's explained away. You said that last year's reduction was just for 1 year, but the programme for government committed to continue to reduce and makes an explicit statement at the start of each academic year. We're approaching the start of the 2025 to 26 academic year, and parents and students have no certainty, and indeed are now led to believe there will be an extra €1,000 to be paid. So however you explain it away, Minister, people are feeling it. They're feeling the shock of this. They're genuinely worried, and it has genuinely thrown budgeting plans into disarray for many households. And that's why we're seeking clarity, and that's why we're joining with students and others next week to protest and to seek a further U-turn from you and your government on this hugely important issue.
What I've been very clear about is that this issue will be part of the broader discussion as part of Budget 2026. And that's how annualised budgeting works in this economy and indeed in many other economies across the world. And that's what we're seeking to do. We'll set out an envelope in the coming weeks, and each minister will have to prioritise within that in terms of their overall expenditure demands. And of course, absolutely cognizant of the need to, over the lifetime of the government, ease the financial burden on students and families. A part of that is around the student contribution fee, but there's also other changes that can be made in terms of income thresholds for SUSI and other grants which have targeted and direct support for students as well. So it's examining the broader issue of costs for third-level students and indeed for other students or indeed at primary and secondary level in terms of the overall cost of education. The last number of years has seen sustained supports on a permanent basis across many areas of our education system. And that's what I know many of my colleagues will be seeking to prioritise as part of Budget 2026.
We now move to the
But that process is important in terms of what's possible.
Thank you for watching. If you want to stay connected with the most important voices in Irish politics, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Here you get unfiltered access to political debates, speeches, and interviews, straight from the source, every single day. Be informed, be engaged, right here with us.